How do you go from being a 23-year-old bright-eyed New Orleans police officer rookie with your whole life ahead of you to being the only woman on Louisiana's death row? I'm going to tell you right now, this broad is absolutely crazy. Antoinette Frank was born on April 30th, 1971 in Opelousas, Louisiana. Now, there's nothing going back in her childhood that's available online that I can read and see, or I can pinpoint exactly where it all went wrong for this nut job. Prototypical childhood from anybody growing up in Opelousas, I would imagine. It's not exactly clear if her father was constantly in the picture or not. I don't know if they were divorced. The father was around. Maybe he just didn't spend too much time rearing his daughter. He was a Vietnam vet. He comes back to the States. He might be dealing with some psychological issues from the war. Mom is there. She's doing the best she can. Her brother, he's stuck in the suburbs. Other than that, what happened to this dingbat? Who knows? There was always one thing that Antoinette wanted to be when she grew up, and it was almost like an obsession, if I can use that word. And that is, she wanted to be a police officer, and she wanted to be a cop in New Orleans. When she was younger, she was a part of the Police Explorer program in Opelousas. And in fact, she so wanted to be a cop that I want to say the very week that she turned 20 and a half, that was the minimum age to put in an application with the New Orleans Police Department, she did so. She submits her application, and in hindsight, they probably shouldn't have hired her. Now, I know someone out there watching this video is either a police officer or possibly your former law enforcement officer. So please don't take to heart what I'm about to say. But to become a police officer, you really do not have to be terribly intelligent. But there are some prerequisites that I would guess that you need to possess or have to become a cop. Number one, you have to have somewhat of a good moral character, I'm guessing. Number two, it would be good that you don't have a criminal record. That would be great. But number three, and the most important one to me, is you cannot be crazy. You can't have any mental deficits. Now, that's going to be very difficult to weed these people out when you're hiring them to protect and serve the public. But there is no perfect system. So Antoinette Frank, she comes to the police department to fill out the application. Now, part of the application is a psych evaluation, and you're being tested on 14 different characteristics, trying to get some kind of a mental evaluation of you. And also, they're going to ask you questions that I would guess are pretty much common sense to kind of gauge what kind of person you are. They're going to ask you stuff like, how do you make decisions in a tense situation? Would you give a family member a speeding ticket if you pulled them over? Why do you want to be a police officer? Let's say you're on a raid, a drug raid, and you're with your partner, and there's a lot of drugs and money, and you see your partner take some money and stuff it in his pocket. What do? These are average questions that if you're of at least average intelligence and average IQ, you pretty much know at least either how to answer it or fake answering it. So this woman fails that test, and she failed it pretty badly. She was marked on her application as being shallow, superficial, and not fit for the job. Put a big old red stamp on the application. Bam! Do not hire. Do not hire. But for some unknown reason that I can't find out anyways, there's some kind of a loophole in the application process. By the way, my favorite part of the application process is my favorite question. Why do you think that we should hire you? That basically means beg on your knees for this job. So the loophole that I was speaking of for the application process is that New Orleans is desperate for police officers. They're firing officers faster than they can hire them. On that year, a couple years back, there was a rampant arrest of crooked cops in the New Orleans area. So for some unknown reason, and this is how desperate they are, they give her a second chance to do the application over again. And when she comes back to do the application, she's dressed, they would say provocatively. When you go to a job for an application, from what I remember, it's always good to go to that job dressed up like you're going to work for that job. But she comes in this like a cocktail dress. She's dressed up like she's a side piece of some rich guy at a dinner party or something along those lines. But she makes it past the test, and she's hired on, and she goes to the police academy, and later on she would become a New Orleans police officer. This is the 7th District Police Station here in New Orleans, and this is where Antoinette Frank was assigned to. So when she worked, she would come down whatever street, however she would get here, pull right on in, and she would park her car and go get her cop car, and she would go patrol the mean streets here in New Orleans, Louisiana. I'm sure the building looks completely different. This looks like a new construction, but 30 years ago, Antoinette Frank went to work right here. Now, I know that police officers don't make a whole lot of money, but some of the benefits of being a cop is other than, you got respect from your friends, your family, also a little bit of fear. And it comes with a sense of entitlement, somewhat, a little bit of power. Sometimes it gets into your head, so to speak, but a positive side, if you will, of being a police officer is that the money could be pretty decent if you put the work in, and also there is plenty of work to be had. Now, I guess different, police departments, they have different rules about that. But there is plenty of work to be had, and one of the things being a police officer is that you get to do side jobs, and that's what Antoinette Frank was doing. She got a part-time gig as a security guard at a Vietnamese restaurant not too far from here called the Kim An restaurant, and it was owned and ran by the Vu family. And I used to work for an Asian restaurant, for a while. So when you work with, these people, you can become quite close with them. And they really, really loved Antoinette. She would often, even when she wasn't working for them, she can go in there and eat whatever she wanted. They would give her gifts. They would loan her money. These were very, very good people. And there was another officer that worked the other days that Antoinette didn't work. His name was Ronald Williams. He was actually in charge of doing the shifts between him and her. And, Ronald Williams, he's having a baby. So he's going to want to work as much as he can because he's going to have a mouth to feed. Now, it had been about a year as Antoinette was working when there was a shooting somewhere on the east side, which is where we're at right now. So Antoinette goes to the hospital because some kid got shot. His name was Rogers Lacaze. So she meets this dude, and Rogers Lacaze is a drug dealer. He's a known drug dealer, low-level drug dealer. He's not doing too many big things. And for the life of me, I cannot understand why. But, you know, Antoinette's 23, he's 18. Women don't normally go after younger dudes, but she, for some unknown reason, goes after this guy, and they hit it off. Now, mind you, this guy is a criminal, he's a drug dealer, and you're a cop. So she's jeopardizing her own job, her career, by even fraternizing with this guy. But they meet up and he does something, or it's his character she likes, so they hit it off. They go out a couple times, they start dating, they become intimate. She starts buying him gifts, she's buying him clothes. Now at first, listen, she's encouraging him to like give up the whole criminal activity stuff. She's telling him, hey, you should, clear your, change up your life. Maybe you want to go get your GED, get a legit job, all this, that, and the third. But Lacaze, he ain't trying to hear it. Yeah, he likes fast money, and, he has some kind of influence in the streets now. He's dating a cop. He bagged a cop, and his friends are like, damn, she's pretty fine, and, that's impressive, And so they're dating, and she would like take him on calls with her. She's letting him drive her police car around. When she would introduce him to like other officers, she would introduce him as, oh, this is my nephew, or if people weren't in the know, this is like a field cadet. He's just doing a ride along with me or whatever. And their relationship would continue to grow and grow and grow, and she would start becoming, I guess if you say the word influenced by Lacaze, whatever the case might be. He would say she influenced him, vice versa. But things would go quickly dark in her life. So as the months go on that Antoinette is a police officer and she's working part-time at the family's restaurant, her shifts are starting to get less and less frequent. Like I said, Ronald Williams is having a baby. He has that baby, and he's scheduling more shifts for himself and less for Antoinette. And one of the reasons why is because he didn't really care for Antoinette. Number one, he didn't like the fact that she was dating the Lacaze character. And Williams did tell the Vu family, he said, you shouldn't be so nice to Antoinette. She's taking advantage of you. She just comes waltzing in here with her nephew, which is really her boyfriend, and you guys just feed them. They're taking advantage of you and your generosity. Now, the Vu family, they start getting a little bit wary of Antoinette. And when she starts bringing Lacaze around, they don't like the way he looks. And the reason why is because Lacaze has gold teeth in his mouth. And from what the family knows, only gangsters have gold teeth in their mouth. So they started, within the weeks, started getting a little bit wary of Antoinette. They started side-eyeing her, and it became pretty uncomfortable, her coming into the restaurant. And they was like, oh, hey, and they're listening to William say that even though she's a cop, she's not a good person. March 3rd, 1995, it's about 10 p.m. Now, the restaurant normally would close at around 11, but because it was so slow, they just decided to close early. So the mother who owned the restaurant, she goes home. So there's about 5 or 6 people in the restaurant at this time. So Antoinette comes into the restaurant and she just grabs a couple of drinks. Her and Lacaze, they're gonna go to a movie. So they grab the drinks and they leave. They would come back about 30 to 45 minutes later and they said, the movie, we were too late. And so we just said, forget it. So she says, hey, can I get this and that, beef, chicken, steak, whatever she wants, right? So they make it for her and they put it in styrofoam containers and she says, thank you, and then she walks out. But for some unknown reason, which you're about to find out, she changes her mind and she and Lacaze are gonna eat inside. So they're eating their food inside, and one of the Vu children, Chow, she's looking at them and she tells Ha, she's like, hey, take the money and hide it or something like that, because I don't trust her. Like, I got a bad feeling about this woman. So as they're eating, one of the Vu kids puts the money in the microwave. Now, there's gonna be a lot of money in this restaurant and that they keep in their house. And I don't know why, but the Vu family doesn't really trust banks. So they're known to keep a lot of cash, and Antoinette has seen this before. So after Lacaze and Antoinette are done eating, they go outside and they start, kind of talking to each other about Antoinette and the gangster boyfriend or whatever. So later on, Antoinette comes back. Now, this time, she's like trying to open the door, but she can't because they locked it. So she grabs a key and unlocks the door, and Chow's like, what the hell? Well, she doesn't know this, but a couple of weeks before, Antoinette had stolen the keys. So Antoinette comes in and she tells Chow, hey, we gotta talk for a minute. And Chow, she gets that lump in her throat. She's like, oh my God. So in walks Antoinette with Lacaze. And as she walks, she goes around the corner and Chow hears a shot, pop. And that shot came from a gun that Lacaze fired from behind, hitting Ronald Williams in the back of the neck, severing his spinal cord. He falls to the ground and here's another shot. In the chaos, the Vus, they split up. So Chow and her brother, they go run into the walk-in with another employee. And there's some kind of a glass partition or facade from the cooler so they can kind of see what's going on. So they're hiding, and Antoinette, she's yelling at Ha Vu and her 17-year-old brother, Quang. They're saying, where's the money? Where's the money? Where's the money? And she's like, what the hell is going on here? She can kind of see what's going on, but she can't see the entire area. So Antoinette is yelling and screaming, talking about, where's the money? Where's the money? Finally, they go to the microwave and get the money. So she makes both Ha and Quang kneel on their knees. She takes her 9mm gun, pop, 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 double taps both of them in the head. I believe the younger brother Quang, she has shot him a couple times in the chest too. He might have gotten shot 6 times. But right here, 4952 Bullard, this is the exact location where the Vu family had their restaurant, and this is where Antoinette Frank and her boyfriend, Robert Lacaze, brutally murdered 3 people. So some time goes by before Chow and Kwok, they come out of the walk-in. One of the Vu kids goes around the bend and sees Officer Williams on the ground dead. Chow's heart sinks because she knows like that her brother and sister were out there. And she looks into the kitchen area and sees Ha and Kwong dead on the ground. She lets out this scream, and they're screaming, "Call 911, call 911." I don't know why, but for some unknown reason, they couldn't get through to 911. They tried several times. Finally, they call a family member to call 911, and I think one of the other VU kids kind of ran to one of the neighbors' houses to call 911 as well. So they hear sirens in the background, and they're nervous because Antoinette is a cop, so they're thinking she's coming back to kill the rest of them. And then they hear other sirens in the background, so they're like, okay. So about 3 or 4 cop cars come over here, and the cops are talking to the VUs, and they're telling them what happened. They're saying, they're telling them what happened. Guess who comes to the scene? Antoinette Frank and her New Orleans police issued patrol car. And Chow, her eyes as big as saucers. She's like, just this woman that just murdered her brother and sister and Officer Williams. She comes and she's like, yeah, what's going on? And I heard on the radio that there is a shooting here. And all of a sudden, Chow, she's like frightened, and she like jumps behind another officer, and she starts like rapidly talking in Vietnamese. She's like, cha 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 cha, and nobody understands Vietnamese. They're like, well, what's going on here? And she's like, you know what's going on here? You just killed my brother and my sister. So the cops look at Antoinette, and they look at Chow, and they're like, what? Like, when Antoinette came, at first, she was telling them that she was here and that these robbers came in and she was an eyewitness to the crime or some kind of nonsense like that. And Chow and Kwok and the other employee, they're like, no, she killed my brother and my sister, and she killed Ronald. So they the story's so crazy. I'm just imagining me at the scene of the crime and them doing that. So about an hour and a half later or so, they arrested Antoinette Frank, and they booked her on suspicion of triple murder, and they would also quickly grab Rogers Lacaze as well. They were both eventually tried and convicted of the triple murders of Officer Ronald Williams and both Ha and Kwong Vu. They both basically pointed the finger of blame at each other. They both said that the other forced the other to do it, and just basically blaming each other instead of themselves. So eventually, both were sentenced to die via lethal injection. However, Lacaze's conviction or sentence was changed to life in prison. So he is now off of death row. He will never get out. He will die in prison in Louisiana. Antoinette Frank, she's still on death row. And as of 2023, her appeal was denied. It's looking like she is, in fact, gonna get executed. And I will be closely following this story to see if they actually carry out the sentence or she somehow gets her sentence changed to life as well. So this is the final resting place of Officer Ronald Williams. Very sad for a fellow officer to turn their back on you and then kill you. Antoinette Frank should have never been hired. And because of that, this man and the Vus had to pay with their lives. Rest in peace to both the Vus and Officer Williams here. If you watch my channel, at least on occasion, I have a saying, and the saying goes as follows: behind every woman is a man, meaning that a lot of times when I read stories of women who commit these atrocious acts, oftentimes I find that in their life, they were abused by a man, or they were made to be that way by a man. Now, I'm not excusing anybody and their actions. I'm not blaming anybody else but Antoinette Frank. But the story does not necessarily end here. We're walking down Michigan Street right now, and Antoinette Frank used to live on this street with her father, Adam Frank. And Adam, he went missing sometime around August of 1993. Well, about 2 months after Antoinette was sentenced to death, a little kid who was playing outside of the home where her and her father used to live at, the dog was playing with this bone. It brought it to a kid, and the kid looked at the bone. It was really weird, so he showed his dad, and his dad said, "I don't think that's an animal bone. That's a human bone." So they called the police. The police came to the house, and they searched underneath the house, and they found half of a human skeleton. Now, I do not know why, but they were unable to get any kind of information, definitive information on whose skeleton that was. They said in an article that they believe that the skeleton showed signs of a bullet wound. And it was this house right here where the father and daughter used to live. So did Antoinette kill her father too?